All right, everyone. Hello. You are listening to the Minding Mind podcast, where we live life with ease, connection, and permission to just be. I'm your host, Evelyn LeVasseur, and welcome back to another episode. Today, I get to sit down with Sam Leeson to talk all about parenting through your intuition, and I cannot wait for you to hear more. But before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about Sam. Sam is a parent to two grown men. It was following the birth of her eldest child that she realized she was called to facilitate the journey for people who wanted to become parents and to work alongside them as they chart their own unique paths through parenting. For more than 25 years, Sam has dedicated herself to supporting individuals and couples who are looking to start or expand their families through education, coaching, and physical support. As the founder of babyREADY, she has helped thousands of people navigate the journey of parenthood. With extensive experience attending births, guiding parents, and educating queer clients about their options for family creation. Sam, I am so excited to have this conversation. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
As am I.
So exciting.
Before we get started, I always like you to have, give us a little background just about you. Who is Sam, and how did Sam even come to figure out what it is that she wanted to do with her life?
That's a loaded question.
Yeah.
I think I came to what I want to do with my life a couple of different ways. The first was that I've always known I was queer, but I chose to live a closeted life, mostly because of the times and because of where I grew up, and mostly because of the little comments that people made that they would not have realized, even now, would make me feel unsafe to out myself, but made me feel like I had to live a different life than I authentically dreamed about. That was part of it. I think the other part of it was knowing this about myself sort of led me down a path that when I got to university, I was studying women's studies and poli-sci. And I think at the time, I believed that I wanted to do something in the realm of politics, but certainly from a women's perspective and honoring women and acknowledging women, because we have such a vital life force to give to the world of politics. And we've come to learn that. Bear in mind, this was a very long time ago. I was in university well over 25 years ago. So I was making these decisions in a different time than we see now, although as much as things have changed, they haven't changed all that much. And so while I was at university, I started doing work in the OBGYN program at the university. I was teaching second-year med students how to do pelvic exams, because it is something that otherwise they didn't learn until they were on an ER rotation or something like that while they were going through their schooling. And I have a family history of pelvic health related challenges. I lost my grandmother when my mother was 4 to uterine cancer. So I wanted to make sure that doctors knew what they were looking for. That's sort of what rooted me joining that program. But it also led me to learning a little bit more about women's health and wellness. Fast forward to not very long later, just after I finished university, I gave birth to my eldest child. And I went through that process as a high-risk patient and felt as though I was not given an opportunity to make a lot of decisions for myself on that path. I got pregnant, and then everybody else made decisions for me, including through the birth process. And after he was born, it had been some time during the pregnancy, someone had mentioned the word doula to me and had peripherally told me what a doula was. And after he was born, I thought, no, I need to investigate this more. I need to find out how I can help people have a better birth experience than I had. This isn't right. I figured it out. I did some training, and on December 21st, 1998, I attended my first birth in the role of labor support and came home from that birth and said, this is what I'm supposed to do with my life. This feeds my soul. Helping people have the kind of birth that they dream of was truly what I wanted to do. And that sort of blossomed into me working in the capacity that I do and have done since that time, I've had the honor of attending over 500 births in the role of labor support. I took some more classes, 3-year program through a local college to become a childbirth educator, and I'm a lactation specialist. And I pulled everything together. And my children were able to grow up and watch me do this and watch me help people achieve their dreams, and learned that I was so passionate about what I did. I loved what I did. So they grew up just assuming that they would find employment that fed their souls as well, which is a beautiful gift to be able to give a child. So
Yeah.
many people hate what they do. They
Mhm.
just hate it. And so I was grateful that I could go to work every day and they could see how amazing it could be.
Amazing. I mean, that is a gift, right? Because I think that a lot of us are raised with the idea that joy is almost like it could have been selfish, right? Joy is not something that you should desire.
Mhm.
Happiness is not really something that you chase. Instead, it is go to the job that has a steady income that can provide you with a 401 or a 403, and then after you retire you can start living. But I feel like there are so many examples of people like yourself and myself that are just disrupting that train of thought at all, and saying like you can get paid and get paid well to do something that you love, to do something that fills you up, and to do something that impacts other people too, right? So you said so many different things though, so I want to go back to, you said you knew your whole life that you were queer,
Mhm.
but you followed a more traditional route and got married
Mhm.
to a man, had
Mhm.
children. My
Mhm.
question to you is, even though you were very motivated and dedicated to growing as an individual in school and growing a family and being a very present parent, how do you think that keeping this secret for yourself, how do you think that impacted your ability to show up the way you wanted to in other areas of your life?
I think in actual fact, for me, it motivated me to show up in other areas. I think that's part of what motivated me to join the team with the OBGYN program at Western, at the university I attended. I think that's part of what motivated me to become a volunteer with the Sexual Assault Center in the community I lived in. Those kinds of things were part it just all motivated me to do. If I wasn't doing what I needed for my life at the time, even though I knew what I needed, then I needed to put all of my energy out into the community and into my children. I homeschooled my children so I could spend as much time with them as possible. You can imagine being a labor support provider and a childbirth educator. Most of my work was evenings and weekends. So my time with my kids really was during the day. So that was a huge part of it for me. I wanted my kids homeschooled so I had some time with them. I didn't give birth to them to have everybody else spend time
Yeah.
with them. I wanted the
Mhm.
time with them. But I think to answer your question, I really focused on putting everything I could into everyone and everywhere else because I wasn't doing what I needed to do for me. And so that energy needed to go somewhere else.
I can totally understand that and resonate with that idea of fulfilling this need in some way by giving someone else the thing that you need. So at what point do you feel like that changed for you? And when did you decide, like, I have been pouring out for so long, it's time for me to be me? How was that received?
Oh, so the answer to the first part of your question is I distinctly remember when it happened. The day my eldest was 11, my youngest was 8, I had had a conversation with them. They had explained that they thought they'd like to go to school.
Hmm.
And we had been in a fairly informal process through education up to that point. So Fergus, my eldest, would have been going into grade 6. My youngest would have been going into grade 3. And we dropped them off at school. And I had a breakdown.
Mm.
I completely broke down. My kids were going to school. They were going to be starting a life somewhat separate from me. I mean, I was grateful the community that I homeschooled in, it wasn't a religious community. It was just a group of like-minded people with children around the same age. And we played hockey together and we did activities together and we, went different places together, and it was a real community, but we were all interconnected, the parents and the children. And so I put my children in a Waldorf school because I thought that would be a good transitional school. They do a lot of experiential learning. So in terms of transitioning from being out of a classroom into a classroom, I wanted it to be as smooth as it could possibly be for them, and dropped them off at school that September morning, and had a panic attack on the way home, and realized I'm honoring my children and what they've asked me to do because that's what they feel like they need to do, and I'm not honoring me. And over the course of the next 3 months, I started to put into place strategies to be able to change my life. And I spoke with my spouse at the time, probably around New Year's, and said, things have to change. I can't live this life like this anymore. This isn't fair to me. It's not certainly not what I want my children to see. I want my children to see that it's okay to live authentically as you need to live. And so by March of that year, I wasn't living in the home anymore. We'd had the conversation with the boys, and I came out to my family, to my friends. And how was it received? It was received very poorly by the kids at first. We had a lot of conversations about it. And when I say poorly, they were hurt, but they weren't brokenhearted. I think they were brokenhearted for the image that they had of the family unit, but they were respectful of the fact that that was what I felt I needed to do. And then with family and friends, I kind of didn't give them a choice. I felt like I had given them enough say in my life up to that point, and it was because of the way that they had talked and acted and behaved and reacted over the years to a variety of different things. I kind of said, this is me. And if you don't like it, it's kind of your problem, not mine.
Yeah. Yeah. That, I mean, okay, so there's also so much with that, because the fact that I want to say, first of all, I hope that you give yourself the credit that is due, just for the fact that an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old could come to you and say, I know we've been doing this for our entire lives, but this is what we want. Let's have a conversation. Like, that's testament to your parenting and your ability to create a space that was safe enough for them to just tell you how they felt. And then for you to take their concerns into consideration and then make a decision that actually was what they needed, right? Because a lot of times I think that as parents, we get really wrapped up in what we think is best for the kids, and we hold fast to those ideas and go completely against their instincts, right? So we teach them to shut down their own intuition because we're parenting from a place of, I guess, fear and wanting. I know that our decisions are rooted in wanting them to be safe, but also, a lot of times our decisions teach them to shut down their instincts. And then we wonder why later they spend so much time questioning themselves. Like, we kind of taught them to do that. So, I just want to commend you for creating this environment where they, at such a small age, felt so comfortable telling you, mommy, this is what we think. Let's talk about it. Because that's beautiful. A lot of people don't have that ability in their home. The parent-child relationship is one of authority and, following the rules. So first, that's beautiful. And I totally understand the transition. How did they do transitioning to school?
They had a blast. So there were kids that they knew at the school already. The Waldorf school they were going to, while it was 40 minutes from the house, was school that sort of and housed kids from a bigger geographic area. So they knew some of the kids in the school. That made that much easier to go and to be a part of it, the process. And then they loved the things that they got to learn there that maybe I hadn't thought to teach them before because it wasn't in my wheelhouse, or it wasn't something I knew much about. And so I hadn't exposed them to it for them to ask me to teach them about it. So it was really, they embraced the opportunities to learn in different ways with people that they enjoyed spending time with. So it was great.
I love that. This is bringing up for me the idea that you hear that the person you choose to marry and even the children that you bring into this world are a mirror. Like the things that they do are a mirror of the things that you need to work on about yourself, right? And I believe that because let me tell you, sometimes when I'm talking to my daughters, I'm like, why am I triggered? Oh, because they're hitting something that I really need to dig into, right? Maybe in the moment I'm irritated, and after I'm like, I see you rearing your ugly little head. Here we go. Let's get into this. But I feel like your children being able to say what it was that they wanted and needed at that time was almost permission for you to do the same.
Mhm,
Do you
mhm.
feel
I
that?
think you're probably right. Yeah, and as you say that, I think you're probably right. Would I have been able to put all that together myself looking back on it? I don't think so, but yes, I think that that's probably it. They told me what they needed, and so I needed to take a moment to acknowledge what it was I needed.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that when you can step back out of it and see just the beauty of the dynamic of a relationship in that you gave them the safe space to speak to their authenticity and they turned around and, gave you permission to do that for yourself. It's almost
Mm,
like you were creating what you needed without even realizing that's what you were doing for them and for yourself.
right? That's true. That's very true. Yeah.
I always believe that kids are our best teachers if we're willing to learn the lessons. So my question to you is then when you decided that you were going to live more authentically to you, were you continuing your work in the birthing space?
Yes, I at that time, that's a good question because at that time, I did take a pause from a lot of it. I think I probably felt like there were so many transitions happening in my life at that moment, and everything was sort of intersecting at the same time that I did step away from attending births, teaching classes, doing lactation support, and but that didn't last long. I mean, part of it was I needed to there's a beauty in the work of doing the birth work and the classes and stuff in that I get to work with people at really truly the most wonderful time of their life, the most hope-filled time of their life. But it isn't necessarily consistent. While I was able to make a living doing it, it wasn't consistent. And I needed to be able to then provide for myself in a more consistent fashion. So part of it was I took a step back so that I could do some work with bringing in a more consistent paycheck to keep a roof over my head and things like that. And lovely enough, I was able to do some work with a family whose baby's birth I had attended and whose classes I had taught. So I knew them personally. And when I told them what was going on in my life, they said, "Oh, we've got some space for you within our organization." So I worked with them for a bit, but I was probably only out of the birth industry for about a year or so. And I realized I really need to step back into it. I miss it too much. So I kind of put a toe in and then a two toes and then a foot.
Yeah.
And it didn't take long before I dove right back in. But I
Yeah.
had to. I had to sort of create a hierarchy of what my needs were
Mhm.
and how I was going to best achieve those.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So when you talk about like parenting and helping people to parent intuitively, how do
Mhm.
you guide couples and individuals to be able to parent from a place of what they feel is best when there are so many opinions around them that literally like instill this guilt and fear of judgment? Like, how do you get them to bypass that and just do what they feel is best?
I start by having some really real conversations with them about their experience in life growing up, what they felt their parents did really well, what they wish their parents had spent more time learning more about or had taken a different perspective on, because sometimes that's the root of it. It isn't that they hated this and this that their parents did, but they wish that when their parents did those things, they had also thought to incorporate this or this. It's a whole sort of series of things and emotions that can come into play. And if it's a couple, then they both have their own unique histories that they're bringing to the table. And so one person may feel very strongly about one thing, where the other person feels the opposite to that. And so, how do we find balance? So, really and truly, it's about starting from what has your history been? And what were the things that you truly loved that your parents did for you? And then we can build on that. But the other part of it is reminding them regularly, whether that's talking to them. Lots of couples that I'm working with, we speak very frequently in the beginning until they start to feel like they're getting into a groove, and then we can back off and speak touch, just do touch bases every few months or once every 6 months. But at first, it can be really reminding them that the outside voices are outside voices, and the only ones that matter are the ones within the four walls of your home.
Mhm.
And I think that the thing that I tell every single parent that I meet is that no person outside of yourself and your partner, if you have one, will love your child as much as you do. Your parents love you like that, and they love their grandchildren, but differently.
Yeah.
Your friends, your family, your colleagues all love you, and they want what's best for your child, but none of them will love your child the way you do.
Mhm.
And so every decision you have to make has got to be from the place that they mean well, but this is your family, and you have to be okay with respecting that, and smiling and nodding a lot. Parenting is smiling and nodding a lot, and perfecting that. Thanks, I'll take that into consideration. Oh, I hadn't thought of that. And shelving that. If it doesn't speak to your soul, then shelve it. It's not for your family. Do what works best for you.
Yeah.
Leave the rest behind.
Yeah.
But it's giving them the confidence, and the
Yeah.
confidence takes time to build in anything. A new job at work, learning to drive a car on a busy highway, going to on a vacation to a place you've never been before where you don't speak the language. All of it takes confidence.
Mhm.
Parenting is no different.
Yeah.
Moving in with a loved one,
Mhm.
all of it takes confidence, but it takes time to build that confidence.
Yeah. I think there's so much around parenting that brings up these fears of not being accepted, that fear of like being judged. But I think it's also coming from a place of you you want to prove that you can do this, right? You want to prove that you can do
Mhm.
it well. You want to prove that your way is still good. But sometimes like it's you almost fall into that trap of doing things that go against what you believe because it's what someone else thought was right, right? So there's like that problem, or not the problem, but like there's that difficulty of, I mean, really truly stepping into you, really truly connecting to what makes you feel good and what lights you up and what makes your heart feel full. Because I feel like there are so many things that could come in and silence your needs. But like when you truly connect to you and when you truly get grounded and centered in who you are, it is so easy. Like for me now, my oldest is 15, my youngest just turned 12, and I will not explain myself to anyone ever. And
Mm.
I don't feel bad about that. But it took a long way to get there, right? Like it was a
Mhm.
hard road to like be able to say, I'm not explaining myself. Like we don't do sleepovers, and I will not explain myself. Just there's so much that people comment on or say
Mhm.
things about. And I think at this point, most of the commenting has stopped because they know I don't partake. But I think in the beginning, I would sit in silence in their presence and then rage in private. For now, when things come out of people's mouths, I say, oh, well, that tells me a lot about you. And I move on, right?
Mhm.
It's over with. But I think that it is this connection to yourself that helps you to be the parent you want to be.
100%. It's one thing I remember from when my eldest was, I think he was maybe 4 weeks old or 4 months old. He wasn't very old. And I was meeting my parents. They lived about 2 hours from me, and I was meeting my parents for dinner one night just to see them, mostly so that they could see the baby, let's be honest,
Yeah.
first grandchild. And my dad said to me, "How you doing, kiddo?" And I've always been daddy's girl. He and I are super tight, and I did, what kids do with their parents because it's safe to do it. And I was like, "Oh, Dad, I'm just so tired. New parent, I'm tired." And he said, I was listening to a radio station that I like to listen to, but he hates listening to the other day. And there were some experts on there saying that by the time baby is my child's age at the time, they should be sleeping through the night and they shouldn't need to feed through the night. And I was really taken aback. And I said, "Oh, that's not what I'd read." And he said, "You know what? I think you read too much." And I thought, wow, all through high school, all I wanted you to tell me was that I was reading too much, right? Never heard it then. All of a sudden, and I was hurt. And I went away from that interaction and I sat down with myself and I thought, it's funny. I feel like there's been a number of times since my child was born that my parents kind of make these little comments that suggest that I'm not doing things right. And then it dawned on me, my dad was trying to appeal to me by listening to a radio station that I listen to. It's a public broadcast radio station in Canada. And he was trying to connect with me. He was trying to relate to me. And I let myself be pushed away from that conversation because I was hurt by that. And I needed to understand where they were.
Mm.
Here we've got two parents. First of all, my mom's mom died when my mom was 4. It's not like she had a lot of parenting example or someone to turn to when I was a kid that she could ask questions of. So I've got these two parents who did the best that they could for me. And they truly did. And they always made sure that I knew I was loved. And I'm doing things differently than they are. My mom didn't feed from her body. That's not what she wanted her breast to be used for. And that was very common
Yeah.
in the early 70s. And in some places, still very common. So, not a judgment on her, but that she couldn't relate to that. So, she made comments about me feeding from my body. And I realized that they were feeling left out. And
Mm.
so I made a point of going up to their house the following weekend. I packed my baby up and off we went up to the house. And I sat them both down and I said, "I need you to know that you did an amazing job. You raised me to the very best of your abilities. You gave me everything you could, and you made sure I knew I was loved. I need you to trust that I love my child as much as you love me. And every decision I make, I will wonder if it was the right one, just like you did,
Mhm.
until I start to get my bearings as a parent. And when I need your help, I'll ask for it. But please understand that I make decisions different than you would have made because you gave me the strength and courage to do so, not to spite you." And after we had that conversation, the world changed for me. My parents became more open to asking questions if they didn't understand. My mom was so funny. She would say, "Oh, he's a little fussy. He may need to feed. You should probably feed him. Oh, we're going for a walk. Do you want me to get the sling?" And she just instantly became a different person
Yeah.
around how I was parenting because I had acknowledged how she had parented. And I felt like I was trying to give myself that gift to explain that to them. But I realized retrospectively it was a gift they needed from me. They needed me to acknowledge there's a difference, but it isn't a judgment.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, first of all, it is so beautiful that you were able to have that conversation and it just be something that, you're expressing your need, but you're also expressing your gratitude in the same way. And I feel like what you did was you gave them permission almost to relax into a new role and not have
Mhm.
to, because maybe there's a piece of them that is like, I did this before. She's never done this before. I have to teach her how to do it. Right. And I love that you were able to just kind of head on say, you did a beautiful job and now it's my turn. Right. So
Mhm.
now they could literally step into this role of supporting your decisions instead of guiding them.
And
Amazing.
that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. And then that also gave them permission and the opportunity to create their own unique relationships with their grandchildren. And they're very close. My mom messaged me the other day and said, "Ah, I just had a 2.5 hour conversation with my eldest." Like,
I love
just
that.
he just called out of the blue and they chatted, the three of them on speakerphone, and they had a great time.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So
Yeah.
when you're working with families and they start to have these questions of people kind of interfering in their parenting, or they take it as an interference, right? How do you start to guide that process? Is it the same? Like using your experience, is it the same?
Mhm. For most people, it is the same because it works so well for me. And it sometimes what it is more than anything, by using my own experience and talking to them about what they can acknowledge from their own childhood and growing up, good, bad, or otherwise, gives them the foundation to sort of figure out how to speak to somebody. For some people, it works beautifully. They sit down, they chat with their parents, they have a similar type of conversation, and they realize that things really do change. And for other people, it's a matter of being more firm. And then finally, for some people, if they didn't have a good experience growing up, it's giving themselves permission to separate those roles completely, and not feeling guilty that their history has put them in a position where they can't have that kind of conversation with their parent or what have you. It Life experiences are life experiences, and we learn and grow from them if we give ourselves permission to do so. And it isn't anyone's fault that our life experiences have been what they are. And when we sit back and do nothing but point fingers, then all we're doing is seeing the negative, and we're letting ourselves miss a lot of the beautiful stuff that's there too.
Absolutely. I love this perspective and I love just being able to, I don't know, just kind of watch you live out the fact that you get to be who you get to be and allow others to do the same without
Mhm,
judgment of, because I think there's a fear of other people's behaviors and thoughts and beliefs impacting us. But
mhm.
again, when you are truly grounded in you, you recognize that other people's thoughts, behaviors, and beliefs are not a reflection of you at all. And you can love them and disagree with them, and it's fine. We're all fine.
And some days it's harder than others. Please don't
Absolutely.
misunderstand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some days it's very hard. And there are days I turn to my wife and say, I can't anymore. I can't. That's just getting me to the quick. I can't. But those days are few and far between because, I really do what I can to focus on the positive and not carry anyone else's stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like that's true of, I guess, literally anything in your life. There are so many days where I say, like, there are so many days where I wake up and I'm like, I'm gonna change the world today. I'm gonna
Mhm,
impact as many people as possible. I feel like I can do anything. And there are some days where getting off the couch is too much to ask of me. And both
mhm,
of those days I was doing my best and it's fine. Right? It's fine.
mhm. Yeah.
So yeah, way more good than bad, but also your tools to handle the bad are different. So
Yes,
beautiful.
absolutely.
Amazing. Sam, this was such a good conversation. I'm so grateful that you were here today.
Me too. Thank you.
If our audience wanted to follow you or reach out to you, like where could they find you? And do you offer like specific coaching or how do you work?
I do offer coaching plans. It's all on my website, parent coaching. And more than anything, I do a free 15-minute consultation. Sometimes people just want to know for a good fit. So let's have a free 15-minute consultation. You can find out all about that through my website. It's www.babyready.info. And the name came because sometimes we're house ready, sometimes we're marriage ready, now we're baby ready.
Mm,
And it's for parenting children of any age. Parenting teens is very different than parenting those new babies or those toddlers or those tweens. And so I have different coaching packages depending on the age of the kids and the kinds of things that you're wanting to kind of work through. I'm also on social media. I have a pretty good TikTok following. I've got about 80,000 people that like to follow me on TikTok. Mostly there I'm talking about how to get those babies out and what pregnancy can be like. But I'm at babyREADY LGBTQ on social media platforms.
Amazing. And everything that you mentioned, I will also link in the show notes.
Thank you.
The question of the hour has arrived. And I do say, okay, so in the Minding Mind community, we are all about being intuitive, being instinctual, silencing everything outside of yourself that does not align with your true essence, minding yours. So my question to you is, and I can tell from the little that we chatted about, your journey has been one of truly connecting with who you are, right? How do you feel that minding yours impacts the legacy that you're going to leave?
I think that the biggest way that it's going to impact is really, through my children, through my stepdaughter, seeing me live authentically as myself and unapologetically making the decision to put myself first. Because, and I say this when I'm coaching and doing parenting coaching, I often say, you have to put your own mask on first. We hear this all the time. If we've ever been on a flight, we definitely know that we've heard this before. But it's true. You can't pour from an empty cup. And all of those other cliched sayings are very true. If we haven't lived authentically as ourselves, then we don't have the answers to give, the wisdom to share, the love to share, because we're not loving and honoring ourselves. And yes, I did really well for a really long time, helping everybody else and not myself. But what I got when I started living authentically was children who saw that it's okay to do what makes your heart happy. They saw that in me professionally, but they hadn't seen that in me personally. They saw me light up and embrace life and meet new people. And so I try to walk the walk. And I think that's the legacy that my kids and the world around me is, if you do what works best for you, then others will see that and know that that's exactly what they should be striving for themselves.
That's amazing. Sam, thank you so much for being here today. And I want to tell you that, your story, your life, your presence is really just a living, breathing example of what it can be when you choose you and start living for you. And the way that your life literally will turn around on your behalf and attract all the things that continue to
Mhm.
light you up and fill you up. And we know that it doesn't mean that the bad is erased and the negative opinions
Mhm.
aren't going to be there. It's just that you love yourself so fiercely that those things can't break you anymore.
Yeah.
And just thank you for being you and doing the work that you do. And everyone else, I want to thank you for joining us on this important topic and another episode of Minding Mind. And remember, if this episode resonated with you, please comment, rate, and review the podcast. Your feedback helps me grow. And until next time, I want you to go live your life on your terms and mind your business. We'll catch you in the next episode.